I mean, they're desperate to do anything that says, look, we are on the side of women, we're fighting for women. And as you put it, I mean, this was a stunt, and it was a stunt that they didn't even really intend to pass, which is why it was brought up in this way, where it would require 2/3 vote. In a way, I see a parallel to the voter ID laws that have been passed across the country. It's the sort of thing that at first blush, you go, okay, voter ID, that makes sense, and voters see that, okay, that makes sense. But you don't realize that, number one, they're solving a problem that doesn't exist. There isn't actually voter fraud, just as there is no proof in this country that there's any problem with people aborting fetuses because of their gender. And you also have a situation where you're trying to make something seem like it's a mainstream idea and it's very popular, but under the surface of this law, what you're really doing is criminalizing abortions and potentially throwing women in jail for exercising their constitutional right. And the same thing with doctors, potentially throwing doctors in jail. And there's also an issue where some of the evidence that they relied on was saying that Asian American women may be more likely to abort fetuses based on gender. So you're also throwing a racial element into this that's very scary as well.
Michelle, you know, on these stunt votes, as often as they can, the party that is supposed to suffer for voting looks for a way to vote for it. I remember several of these things going through when I was working in the Congress, and so I began the day wondering, why don't the Democrats just vote for it? Everybody's opposed to gender-based abortion. And then I read an article by Michelle Goldberg, which made me understand exactly why you should vote against this. I just want to point out that you write that the essential provision of the bill is it would imprison doctors who perform sex-selective abortions and force them to report women when they suspect they are seeking such abortions. And so that's the spot. It invades the doctor's communication with the patient and then subjects every doctor any doctor who performs any abortion could then be dragged in for questioning of, did she say anything to you about the gender? What did she say to you about the gender? There would be grounds to question every single abortion provider under criminal suspicion on every single abortion.
Right, and that's one of the ideas behind these laws. I mean, we already have these laws in 4 states, and one of the things that they do is they open up doctors to fishing expeditions. I mean, particularly because it's not the doctor necessarily, especially in a clinic like Planned Parenthood, that's doing the ultrasound to determine gender. You know, they're certainly not doing the CVS or the amniocentesis, which also can determine gender. So how does the doctor know why the woman is coming in? You know, and particularly with this suspicion, I mean, this bill would have a year's imprisonment for doctors who didn't report women that they suspected of aborting because of gender. So what exactly does suspicion constitute? That's one reason why so many Asian American organizations oppose this, is because it would put Asian American patients under heightened suspicion. The other problem with this bill, I mean, nobody supports sex-selective abortion. And, you know, feminists have fought hard against sex-selective abortion in Asia, where it's a genuine crisis. But the problem with this bill is that in American law, right now, you don't need to tell your doctor why you're having an abortion. We don't have reason-based restrictions. We don't have kind of provisions where the government gets to decide whether or not your reason for seeking to end a pregnancy is valid. And once you start putting those things into law, there's
this is part of a broader war on Planned Parenthood in an even broader sense, which is that kind of in tandem with this ridiculous legislation, there's a new kind of pseudo-expose by a group called Live Action, which founded by a girl named, or a woman now named Lila Rose, who's a protege of James O'Keefe, and who kind of her specialty is to go undercover in abortion clinics, particularly Planned Parenthood clinics, and try to goad them into morally compromising themselves. So actually, it's not totally true to say that we have no sex-selective abortion in this country. It's true that it hasn't made a dent in, like in India or China, where you have really skewed gender ratios. We don't have that here. There might be some around the edges in some immigrant communities. There's a little bit of evidence that if their first child is a girl, the second child is more likely than chance would predict to be a boy. We don't know whether that's abortion or IVF, which is another kind of technique of sex selection. But so it's happening to some extent, but certainly not enough to kind of change the gender ratios in this country. What Lila Rose did is sent somebody into Planned Parenthood clinics who would go in, say that they were seeking an abortion in case they were carrying a girl. In the video that I saw, the video taken in Texas, she claimed, she said, she and her husband want a boy and a girl. They already have a girl, so she's determined to abort if she's carrying another girl. And, the counselor actually handles it pretty badly. It's not Planned Parenthood's job to kind of talk anybody out of their abortion or turn them away just because their reasons seem callous or even immoral. But she seems a little bit kind of too enthusiastic about helping this person. I mean, part of the reason is because the operative says over and over again how afraid she is of being judged, which kind of sets up the counselor to try to prove that she's not judging her. Right, exactly.